Reopening Ohio for business. Are we ready? Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Jackie Borchert, Columbus Bureau Chief for the Cincinnati Enquirer, and Ann Fisher, host of All Sides with Ann Fisher on 89.7 NPR News. Ohio is set to partially reopen for business in a week. Confident the spread of coronavirus is under control, Governor Mike DeWine is sticking with his plan to start opening businesses gradually and partially starting May 1st.
Things that we are looking at in making these decisions, we obviously want to get people working again. We want to get people back to as normal a life as possible. At the same time, we have to be careful, and we don't want to see spikes come up in the future, nor do we want to see us have to pull back things.
DeWine says the state will be ramping up testing over the next few weeks, but it will take 3 weeks to get to the point where health experts say we need to be to lift the stay-at-home orders. Ohio now has more than 15,000 confirmed or probable cases of coronavirus. Of course, less than 1% of Ohioans have been tested. 3,053 people have been hospitalized since the start of the pandemic, and 690 people have died from COVID-19. Ann Fisher, we're going for it the 1st of May. Governor DeWine seems cautiously optimistic he'll be able to do it. Are we ready to reopen the state for business?
Right. Well, that's two different things, cautiously optimistic and confident. And the fact is, as you just pointed out, less than 1% of Ohioans have been tested. We're one of the worst states in the country on that score. Who knows whether we're ready or not? They may know more than I do. I'm sure they do, but it's not entirely clear at all.
Jackie, you were at the Friday's briefing at the State House, and Governor DeWine spent a long time on testing and announced that we would see some dramatic testing. Right now, we're at 3,000 cases per day. By the end of May, we're going to be up to 27,000 cases, tested cases every day.
Yeah, I think the number he gave was 22,000 by the 27th, which is still a lot higher than where we are today. We're at between, I think, 2,000 and 4,000 tests a day. It's a really small amount. We've been behind from the beginning. We were one of the, a couple states who back in February got the faulty test kits from the CDC and didn't get a new test kit for a whole month. So we had a whole month where we weren't testing anybody. So, health experts believe that this has been in Ohio and around the country for longer than the test results show us that we have. So testing has been one of those things that all along we've been flying a little bit in the dark on what we're dealing with. And of course, the more people you test, the more positives you're going to have, but you're also going to have other information, where those positives are coming from. And the second half of that is this idea of contact tracing. So once you have a positive result, a public health worker contacts that person and tries to find out who they may have been in close contact with and pass the virus off to build a better idea of how this is spreading, where it's spreading, and how serious it is too, because that's the other thing. We don't know for sure, how we know that this spreads very quickly. We also know some people have no symptoms. Other people end up on a ventilator. And we don't know exactly for sure everything that, causes you to be one of those people on the ventilator versus someone who doesn't feel anything. So we're still learning more about this, and this hopefully will help provide some answers.
Yeah, Dr. Amy Acton, the director of the State Department of Public Health, was asked earlier this week what her ideal testing number would be. She said that Harvard number, which in Ohio is roughly 17,000 tests per day. That's what we need here in Ohio to reach that Harvard University recommended level. We will get to that in 2.5 weeks under the governor's projections that he announced on Friday. The question is, why not just wait 2.5 more weeks till we get to that level and then start to reopen? Ann?
Well, that is exactly the question. Is the fact of the matter is we don't have the kind of information that Dr. Acton and the governor said weeks ago that they wanted before they would reopen. There must be other signals they're getting that this is waning, but that has as much to do with social distancing as anything. And you said it spreads quickly, Jackie, and it spreads quietly. It could happen all over again very quickly and quietly.
Well, one of the metrics they are looking at is hospitalizations, and those seem to be relatively level. You know, if you're
Right.
looking at the whole, the graphing of it, I don't have a graph to show you, but it's relatively a plateau. It is, there have been some upticks in this week in hospitalizations. That's one thing where they're looking at that and saying, look, you know, we're not seeing huge spikes. The whole reason for the stay-at-home order was to buy some time for our healthcare system to basically empty out and stock up on PPE so that we can handle spikes and surges. And now that we're not seeing those spikes, you know, we can maybe take the foot off the brake a little bit, because the flip side of that coin is by shutting all of these things down, we've created an economic catastrophe. And, you know, the governor and lieutenant governor under intense pressure to open things back up. You know, we've had nearly 1 million people lose their jobs in the last month. So, you know, it's balancing those two things. So even though the scientists say we're not where we need to be with tests, you also have the business side saying we can't see a reason why we shouldn't be allowed to try to be open.
Is there any idea what, again, there's 2.5 to 3 more weeks. It's like some governors are waiting until May 15th. I think New York is targeting May 15th. Some other governors are targeting May 15th. Would waiting until then just cause permanent, catastrophic, fatal damage to too many businesses to wait that long at least?
Well, I'm wondering, Jackie, is it clear that that's why they're going back is because of the pressure from businesses?
Well, you know, reporters have asked a couple different ways in the last week. You know, you've said all along the science is what's pushing these decisions. What does the science say now? You know, Harvard says that we're not at the testing capability. You know, what about that? And the answer has been, well, we think that our system can handle, you know, any hotspots that emerge, outbreaks that emerge, that Ohio has done a really good job social distancing and that we can continue doing those things. I think the other thing to remember in all of this is that whatever is announced for May 1st is going to be a very, very, very limited.
Right.
I think people hear the word reopen and they think, oh, it's just going to be like March 3rd again. And I'm planning to go to the Arnold and I'm going to the Blue Jackets and I'm, you know, going to go to the mall. But that's not it at all. And
Right.
I would not be surprised if the businesses that are allowed to open are very, very small, much smaller than you're seeing like in Georgia or Florida or some of these other states.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I agree. I think it's how they do it is going to be more interesting and important than whether they start to open up next
I don't
Friday.
think tattoo parlors will be opening up on
Right.
May.
Kind of hard to get a tattoo from 6 feet away.
Yeah, but that begs the question about what about hair salons? I mean, Georgia's opening up hair salons, you know, restaurants, things like that. I mean, one of the criticisms of the health order that to clarify what was an essential business from what was a non-essential business is it let a lot of gray area. Lieutenant Governor John Husted promises strict requirements in this May 1st allowing of businesses to reopen. Are we confident they're going to be really strict, or is it going to be, again, hoping that businesses do the right thing?
Well, I mean, there's both. You know, we've asked how this is going to be enforced because we know with the original stay-at-home order and the essential, non-essential business battle, there were conflicts over that. So much so that they had to create a new panel to review these conflicts to kind of set a statewide precedent. So I think we are going to see that. I've already been hearing from some employees, some workers who are afraid that their employer is going to open up and not protect people who work there because they weren't really doing a good job of that before. You know, so we've asked how is this going to be enforced, and the answer has been the way that the stay-at-home order has. So hopefully there are it is written clearly enough, and that there's additional guidance in addition to the order that's helpful, because that was another problem with the original stay-home orders that you know, Lieutenant Governor John Husted kept saying, well, look at the order, it's really clear, and all the businesses were calling us, calling the health department, calling the state, I'm sure, asking, you know, for clarification because some things weren't clear.
Yeah, here an example. This week, that panel ruled that the Gabe's discount store, which is very similar to TJ Maxx and Marshalls, if you haven't ever shopped at Gabe's, is allowed to open because they sell toothpaste and disinfectant. So, I mean, it's the same as Marshalls, but all Marshalls needs to do is stock some, Colgate and they're good to go.
Well,
So,
that's been a problem with the stay-home order is that, some of these specialty shops closed voluntarily because they read the order and they didn't see them in there, yet you can get their products those same products at Target or a grocery store or Lowe's or some, bigger box store that sells more than just one type of item.
I asked the commerce director for the state of Ohio today about who is on that appeals a board that you referenced, and I asked her how this might change that role going forward as they start to incrementally open things up, and she said they haven't been given any direction at this point.
well, I got 2 more days, or one more day if you're watching us on Sunday, because Monday we're all going to learn. There was some confusion this week over medical procedures. The governor announced that they were going to ease the state order to allow non-essential medical procedures and surgeries, and that was going to resume. But Jackie, the next day he kind of clarified it. To me, it made it more confusing. Do we know exactly what hospitals are going to be allowed to do? Are you going to be allowed to get a colonoscopy, a knee replacement? Is plastic surgery going to be allowed? Do we know any of those questions?
So the action that the governor took was to go back to the hospitals and they've put together a plan of how they see kind of a phased in approach of starting some things back up while still being mindful of, conserving masks and gowns and PPE and that will need to be used for COVID patients. And so what the governor's done is he's asked them to really, for doctors to reach out to patients who may have, had these certain procedures delayed in the last month, who maybe now feeling those symptoms may have worsened, their condition may have worsened, that delaying things things should not be delayed if they're going to cause further problems down the road. And this was an exception in the original order. But it seems like, there wasn't so much of a careful case by case basis at many of these medical practices. And so he was basically saying you should look at some of these cases and talk with the patients and see if it's something that you should be doing for preventative health. And that includes things like a colonoscopy or a mammogram.
Again, there's nothing prohibited. Somebody could say my tummy tuck is 2 weeks overdue and be on the list, right? I mean, I guess it's not spelled out.
Well, you know what? A lot of those kind of things you joke about a tummy tuck or something, but some people who have had gastro bypasses and have lost a lot of weight, for them it is a medical issue. So, it is probably case by case basis, and I guess it's the way it should be.
Yeah, I mean, the ear infections in kids. Some of them can be held off. Other ones are more urgent because you have permanent hearing loss. There is no.
And yeah, and basically he spoke up because there's a concern that especially has risen among the legislature and the lawmakers, that they're hearing from constituents that some of these things were canceled or postponed and they really shouldn't have been. Maybe a knee surgery that now they're in twice as much pain as they were a month and a half ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to get things back to normal. We're not saying these people should have to wait forever, but that is good. And bottom line is these hospitals have lost a lot of money, and hospital employees have been laid off.
Well, that's their bread and butter are these procedures and these surgeries. It's the majority of their work. And you look to outside of that, a lot of outpatient clinics are even seeing reduced patient load because people, are trying to delay things. They're trying to avoid going out, all to, delay spread of the virus.
And you drive by the parking lots at Riverside or Oishi Medical Center or Mount Carmel, and it's a ghost town. They're empty, and it's just striking. Anyway, we're learning a little bit more about the impact of COVID-19 on nursing home residents. Statewide, nearly 1,200 nursing home residents have tested positive for COVID-19. 477 staff members have tested positive. In Central Ohio, in Franklin County, long-term care facilities have 77 cases among residents, 51 cases among staff. Delaware County has 6 resident cases, but the state is only reporting active cases. It has yet to report the number of deaths in nursing homes. The state promises to release that data next week, but it will be at the county level, not the individual nursing home level. Jackie Borchard, do we know what's going on? Do we have a clear idea of what's going on in nursing homes right now?
No. Um, so, I should say that the Cincinnati Enquirer and the Columbus Dispatch and the Akron Beacon Journal had been pushing for more information specific to nursing homes, assisted living centers, and these long-term care facilities for several weeks, because we know that these are hotspots for this virus. And it is, kind of a concern that's twofold. We were hearing from readers who want to know if their loved one lives in one of these centers, or if they're, thinking about, putting a loved one in, someone moving into these places would want to know if there's been an outbreak. But also, it's a good data point, since we know that these are hotspots, or can be, to kind of show, if there's a concentration and they're all in the nursing home in your county, for example, then, that maybe reduces your risk as someone who doesn't live or work in that facility. So anyway, the list they put out last week was incorrect. They took it down within a few days, and the list they put up this week actually had a fewer number of cases. I think it had 558 residents and 223 employees, but we still don't know how many of those cases took a turn for the worse, were hospitalized, or have passed away. And, that's also important information. And Governor DeWine said that will be part of future releases. And of course, this data is only going to be released once a week on Wednesdays. So that also puts another wrench in when you're trying to, give perspective to readers on the greater picture. We get prison numbers every day. And so, very quickly we were reporters were able to say in their stories right away on Monday that increase over the weekend in positive results was mostly coming from widespread testing in the prisons. It would be great if we could say the same thing about nursing homes, but we're not to that point yet.
Yeah, I guess the argument that the DeWine administration is making is a nursing home is the resident's home. That's where they are living right now. So it'd be the same as if somebody on Main Street in some town had it. You wouldn't know particularly how many people on that Main Street had COVID-19. And also, if you release the deaths, you could look at obituaries, you could piece it together, and you may be able to find out who that person was who died. And that's perhaps an invasion of privacy. The head of the Nursing Home Association, Ann, said, our members tend to think, geez, really, it's really uncomfortable to have that number out there, the death number. But he says the association would have supported the governor had he decided to release facility by facility death numbers.
It is a home, but it's not like a home, because my home isn't regulated by the state. There's lots of things that are overseen by the state in these nursing homes, because they're not like home. They're a lot different. And so that makes me question that logic. And then furthermore, I question it if the Nursing Home Association has really said that they would have released it. Who doesn't side, and hasn't the governor said from the very beginning that they want to be as transparent as possible, and that's why they do these daily briefings and that kind of thing? This sort of flies in the face of that. And by the way, I think if you ask people who are concerned about their loved ones in these nursing homes or rehabilitation centers, or whatever you want to call them, and for whatever reason, they would say they'd sure like to know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, some of the numbers were, in Franklin County, I don't think there's any really startling numbers, but one nursing home in Lucas County, just outside of Toledo, had, I think, 77 cases. Now, I don't know how big
Right.
that facility was, but it's a pretty big number. And these are active cases. That doesn't count folks who have already died and folks who have recovered. So,
Right.
Well, and I think another thing what the newspapers were arguing is that actually there is a 2006 Ohio Supreme Court decision that had to deal with lead in certain homes and the addresses of those homes, and the court ruled that the addresses of those homes were not health protected information. So for us, we saw it as a very clear cut case law in supporting release of that information.
Right. Polls show that roughly 7 in 10 Americans say that people should stay home until doctors and public health officials say it's safe to resume normal activities. But a portion of that minority is making a lot of noise. They've been protesting at the State House here in Columbus, at state capitals around the country. They demanded officials lift the stay-at-home orders. Some are carrying guns. They're waving American flags that don't tread on me, Tea Party flags, Donald Trump campaign flags. Here in Ohio, One person even waved an anti-Semitic poster. Jackie Borchard, this protest story got ugly this week.
Yeah, and I think you touched on a good point. It's not just an Ohio story at this point. We saw these protests at several states in the last couple weeks, and there hasn't been any violence or anything of that sort. But yeah, the signs last week were disturbing and gross, and I think we saw a quick reaction from elected officials in Ohio this week denouncing that one of the groups that says it's organizing these protests in Ohio actually denounced it on their webpage as well, that doesn't reflect what the message that they're trying to take out there. But when you have an event like this, you get a wide spectrum of people, and what we've seen is that when I've gone out and seen the various protesters, you have lots of different groups of people. You have people who are from strong Second Amendment support groups, for example. You also have people who are against mandated vaccinations. You've got libertarians. It's a very kind of eclectic group. There's some business owners. So, interestingly enough, the governor this week moved the location that he is broadcasting his press conferences from away from the State House. And now he's at the Department of Public Safety, which is on the west side of town.
Was that because of safety reasons, or is he just trying to avoid the protest?
We were told security reasons was the reason for that. I mean, look, if you're expecting thousands of people to be on the State House, and they're also driving around. There was, there was an attempt to mimic what happened in Michigan, where they had, hundreds of cars kind of blocking the roads around the Capitol. That all complicates your logistics.
Yeah, we saw that nurse stand in front of the truck. I forget where it was. I'm not sure what state that was in, but
I think it was New York.
It could have ended differently.
But yeah.
It was in Denver.
The other story was Greenwood State Senator Andrew Brenner from Delaware. His wife posted on Facebook comparing. Now, Dr. Acton raised some eyebrows when she said she would endorse a system where folks would carry a certificate of immunity that would allow them to go into businesses. That raised some eyebrows among a lot of people, including civil libertarians. But Senator Brenner's wife took it one step further, comparing it to Nazi Germany. Of course, Dr. Acton is Jewish. It was Holocaust Remembrance Day. And Andrew Brenner didn't condone it. Didn't condemn it. He basically said that wouldn't happen here, which was seen as an endorsement of the original statement.
I mean, what do you say? It's ridiculous how people so cavalierly bandy about the Holocaust and Nazi Germany these days. It's like a knee-jerk reaction. It's utterly absurd. And the idea of comparing Dr. Acton was saying, gee, it would be a dream. Well, of course it would be a dream to have to be able to control and track this disease as it progresses, because it is so contagious and can kill people so easily. But I don't, Sarah Brenner is not an elected official. Democrats are calling for her husband and Andrew Brenner to resign from the Senate if he does not directly apologize, or if she doesn't directly apologize, or something like that. I mean, it's, to me, at this point, that the words have been uttered. She took it off her Facebook. Who cares anymore? It's still there. I can find it for you in a New York second. So I'm not sure what everybody hopes to achieve by uttering and sharing these kinds of images. It's absurd.
I mean, that's Nazi reference. It's just a bad idea. I don't know why.
When are they going to learn?
Both sides do it. Both sides do it.
You're right. And to be clear, Dr. Acton was asked to clarify what she had said on Tuesday during Wednesday's press conference, and she made it clear, and it was implied on Tuesday that when she was saying, "Wouldn't it be a dream?" It was, "Wouldn't it be a dream if we could find out for ourselves if we have the antibody and could be able to tell others we don't, and to go out into the world again and be confident knowing that we cannot get the disease."
And if they don't get if the testing system doesn't get its act together, it will be a dream, because knowing who's carrying the antibodies is crucial going
All right,
forward.
we got to get to our off the record comments, and we'll start with you, Ann. Final thought for
Uh,
this week?
Well, the pandemic obviously has laid bare some very strong weaknesses. That's kind of an oxymoron, but some big weaknesses in the state of Ohio, one of which is the haves and the have-nots. I'm not talking about money, I'm talking about access to the internet. And as we go to online learning and this becomes more of a norm going forward, it's going to lay bare a really huge gap that nobody is adequately addressing right now because they're leaving it to the free market.
All right, Jackie.
Well, election day is Tuesday. And, we found out in the last few days that there may actually be some lines at the polls. And that's because the mail system has some delays due to coronavirus and it may take longer for ballots to get to people. And so if someone has requested a ballot and it does not get to them by election day, they can go to the Board of Elections and cast a provisional ballot in person, which kind of goes against what we were trying to avoid. But also, they want people to know that you can drop your ballot into a safe box, that you don't have to touch anything at your Board of Elections on Tuesday as well.
All right. My final thought, each afternoon, Governor DeWine tries to get creative, a little too creative it is sometimes in his press briefings. Today, he had two helmets, a Cleveland Browns helmet and a Cincinnati Bengals helmet. Of course, it was draft day. Optimism was high, but these are struggling franchises. It literally showed that he was between a rock and a hard place. That's the record for this week. Check us out online. I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.